to talk to people. All right, so today I really want to give a very, very quick background about how practically geospatial solutions are being used, because there are times when you have these case studies which look like they could be useful, but sometimes they just never work. I'm gonna share. Unfortunately, my sharing is not working. So let me quickly check that again. All right.
Faisal, please check and share the admin.
Yeah, it seems it just got disabled when I was testing. It was working.
Okay.
Let me see if I can try again. Sorry about that. Always having technical difficulties somehow. All right, let's try again. Somehow it seems disabled still. Okay, let me share my entire screen and see if that works. Could you see my screen now? You might have to say an yes or no. I
Yes,
don't see your
ma'am.
screen.
Yes, ma'am. It's visible.
All right. Thank you so much. So I'm calling this Mapping the Way to Aid because humanitarian aid is where I spend most of my career, although I slowly switched to climate now. If you have never heard of the UN organization and how they work with emergencies, the first thing UN does is it moves. And in massive way. With World Food Program, one of the agencies I work with, has 140 aircrafts, 20 ships, over 6,000 trucks, and this weird looking innovative thing that can drive in any terrain, or even donkeys at some point. Whatever it takes, the goal of UN during emergencies is to reach people. And most of the times it's in some of the hottest areas where it's almost impossible to get there, but they find a way to get there. So this is such a quick map for where the World Food Program is present around over 120 countries. And with UNICEF, it's present in almost every country, 192 countries in the world. So as you can imagine, all these organizations end up collecting a lot of data. And it varies in so many different formats, sizes, types, with a lot of data gaps. So the crucial thing that we have to do, being this technology experts, but also working in the humanitarian or development field, is to bring this data into information so people can make decisions. And often what happens, I think when I was a student back in IRS, like 15 years ago, the data gaps were massive. The processing power the computers had, the satellite data access was very limited. There were so many challenges in the data itself. Fast forward 15 years, we don't quite have that problem anymore. We are pretty good in collecting and storing and analyzing massive amount of data, especially geospatial data. But unfortunately, we're still not very good at translating that into information which people can use to make decisions. So that's what I want to focus a little bit on today and try to help you understand how many challenges you would have even if you have a perfect working system. Because it feels like it's 2024 and we should have some of these basic questions easily answered, right? But we don't. Before and after any major disaster, the first question that would come to us is how many people would need assistance and where are they located? And even today, most parts of the maps are not fully mapped. So if a village is not on a map, are the people there? And if you don't even know there is a village, how are you supposed to get there? So let's say we figure out how to get there by road, by air, by sea, overcoming any constraints we might have. Can people get to the point where we are going to set up these aid distribution centers? Because it has to be accessible not just for us, which we can use helicopters and airplanes and get the food, but how will people get there is another question that we know. And once we have all these extraordinary work done by humanitarian agencies in bringing all these different projects, how do we map the impact that they have on the ground? And all of those questions are quite hard to answer. It's not very easy because we are looking at the entire world that is very diverse. So when it comes to disasters, I think this is like the mantra I have: everything happens somewhere. Everything. There's nothing that is happening where there is not a location associated with it. And the question is to answer, how do we know where, right? So this is a screenshot from my phone of my own Google Maps when I was in the Republic of Congo. And those two little stars were one of our sub offices where I was trying to reach to, because it's one of the most flood prone region in the world. It's the Congolese River itself running past. So you can imagine how difficult it is. So you see a little yellow line that looks like a road that's going up north, but that road was completely closed, and the rest were just showing as Congolese forest. This is a screenshot of Bing Maps where even those little yellow roads weren't there. It's just forest that you could only see. So the bigger question we wanted to ask is, can we locate every road, every airport, every port, every distribution point, and any critical infrastructure for the whole world? And we often take it for granted of how much information Google Maps has in countries like even India. Now it's quite very well mapped, and in the Western world, you even have indoor maps within Google. So we take this for granted that this is the case for pretty much all of the world. It's not. Like pretty a huge portion of the world is still not mapped. So the first thing that we started doing is, can we automatically generate these maps and use crowdsourcing to get more information in? So we joined hands with OpenStreetMaps. This is one of the UN maps of the same region. And you can see the details, including the deforestation routes that is happening in the Congolese rivers using satellite-based observation, and a lot of incredible volunteers who come in to help us out. And now we have many machine learning algorithms to be able to automatically start detecting them. So that's the first thing, is to understand where are the people. And there are multiple different ways to do it, where satellite geospatial technology becomes incredibly useful, starting from night lights to high resolution data to normal medium resolution data that is giving us plenty of information on a daily basis. Now, the second thing that I always talk about is, everyone on this planet is at a risk for some hazard. There's nobody whom you can point out, irrespective of where they are living, where we could say they are completely free from any risk. Everybody is prone to a risk for a hazard. Now, the question is, how do you know whom? And how do we estimate the probability of each hazard that can happen anywhere on this planet? It's not one country, one zone, or one hazard. And even if all of those people are exposed, there are some people who are more vulnerable than the others. And how do we know who that is? How do we measure this risk and prepare? That kind of brings me back to the current role I have with UNICEF, and we are focusing even more one step on children, saying how many children are there in this world today, and what are the different kinds of risks, especially climate risks, that they are exposed to. Then we started mapping for the whole world, starting with heat waves, trying to understand where in the world heat waves are increasing, how frequent are they getting, and what are the anomalies that we are detecting based on a long-term average. How were things 60 years ago? Because like I said, data is so widely available now. We can go back to the 1950s and 60s and get the weather record to compare each one of these data points with. And we estimate the severity of them. We try to understand where droughts could potentially happen, where floods could happen, coastal, riverine, pluvial or fluvial, different kinds of floods. And sorry, I'm coming back. And where cyclones mostly hit around the world, depending on historical data and how severe they could be. And then we start mapping all the vulnerability of children in each one of these countries, because they are not the same. Like a child growing in Canada versus a child growing in Central African Republic are going to have a very different vulnerability to each one of these hazards, and how much those governments can cope differs. And mind it, we have to do this to the whole world with all the 192 countries around. And then we combine our hazard and exposure and vulnerability to what we call a children climate risk index. So this kind of gives us an idea to categorize which part of the world will be more affected by climatic hazards, not just because of the hazards, but also because of vulnerability of children. And we are starting to do this at a sub-national level. We are going into, this is only at a country level, then the next step is to go into a country and see which state is the most affected, which districts are most affected, which municipalities we should focus on. And UNICEF has a country office in every single one of these countries with field offices and sub offices, then try to implement programs to help people develop in general. So this is to get a comprehensive idea where people are who could be at risk. But like I said, inevitably something will happen, right? So when something happens, everyone needs an alert. And probably most of you grew up in India when after our alert system has become really well. But I grew up when, for instance, the tsunami happened. I wasn't too far from the coast. And I remember there were no alert system in India at that time. And early warning has improved so much so that now I have all these different Facebook groups or Instagram messages. Even before a cyclone forms, we start getting these alerts that are widely shared. And so many schools have these system to help people understand what to do if a hazard happens. But unfortunately, most part of the world still doesn't get an alert. They get caught by surprise when something happens. So early warning is a very, very crucial part where geospatial tech can play this incredible role in helping people, literally saving their lives. So there are a lot of questions that you still have to answer. How early is early enough? When do you start warning people? And for what do you warn people? Because if you want too much, it becomes like the boy who cried wolf, that nobody will listen to the early warning. So you have to be sure that your alerts are timely as well as reliable for people to take into account. And if irrespective of where in the world people are, they should get that alert timely. Hazard can happen anytime, and cyclone can hit in the middle of the night, and we can't fix a 9 to 5 schedule to do that. So we started investing a lot in automation. This is a great example, again, from the Republic of Congo. When a river starts showing increase in water levels, we already start making maps like this, which are automatically mapped for the whole world with diverse data sets to help people understand, potentially in 3 or 4 days, a flood could happen in this basin. And this becomes really life-saving because the sub-office that I was telling you just a little while ago didn't even have a cell phone service. So I can assume most of you don't know what it is to be in a world without a cell phone or internet. And imagine you don't even have an actual phone to call people. So whenever a flood happened in the northernmost village, they will send a guy running so that he can come and alert the local municipality literally on the foot. And now the question is, no matter how fancy my dashboard looks and how incredible the global models are, if this piece of paper doesn't get to the village chief in time so that he can prepare and the people can have enough time to decide to move before the flood arrives. So that is the biggest challenge right now, to close this communication gap. Although we have the data, we are still struggling to make it information in local language, in very simple language, and translate that into decision by the local chiefs. That's a very hard thing to do, and it's going to take more time. Now, once you give an alert, this is an example from Somalia for a flood as well. Everybody needs support. When something happens, it's only fair to assume everybody's vulnerable after an event. Before an event, yes, you can understand who is more vulnerable or not. But irrespective of how rich or poor you are, how healthy or unhealthy you are, when a disaster happens, it affects people. And if it is a massive disaster, like for instance, the Turkey-Syria earthquake, 50,000 people lost their lives and hundreds of thousands of people got affected, irrespective of where they lived, how well they lived before that. So there are some areas in the world, like Chile, for instance, that does enough policies in their national system to make sure the building codes are in place, the adaptation measures are in place. Unfortunately, in most countries, we don't see that. So this is an example of the Turkey-Syria earthquake, because when an earthquake hits, you don't have any time. So when the UN has to respond, the most basic thing that they need is every possible information. And that's why it becomes important to map where everything is. That's my first step. So this is an example where we were already able to map every admin boundary, airports, ports, border crossing points, refugee camps, put all of that together along with a shake area of where the earthquake happened in itself. And then this is one of the very first times, I don't know how familiar you are with the radar, synthetic aperture radar. To me, it's one of the most powerful sort of satellite data for disaster management because you don't have to worry about clouds, you don't have to worry about night or day, you don't have to worry about your swath. It's going to be quite big to be able to understand. Unfortunately, the world is in love with very high resolution optical satellite data. We just love that a lot, and it has its own use cases. But when a disaster happens at scale, optical data are not the most useful. Actually, radar data is more useful. And now, with the advancement in technology, we are able to map damages not only by flood, but for any hazard. So it becomes disaster agnostic. And if there is one field of work that I would encourage you to think about as you are working through, and if disaster is a field of interest for you, is to invest a little bit more to understand the SAR technology. It's incredible. And when we started mapping the damages in Turkey, we also used some unconventional data because even for radar, we had to wait a few days before the satellite became available. So one such data source is the population movement we get from Facebook. Now, when people are moving, and the percentage of population who utilizes Facebook might be small, but it already gives us an indication approximately where people are moving towards. So in some cities, they were moving all around the city. In some cities, they were moving only to the north. Every day, Facebook will provide this anonymized data to us, and we were able to guide the teams on the ground to tell them where to put the municipal kitchen right after a disaster. The information gap is huge, and that's where geospatial data can fill in very well until the ground assessments become available because it takes time to go and survey a large scale disaster. But the optical data, very high resolution, is not, it's not completely useless either. But unfortunately, most disasters are because of floods or tropical storms when it's obviously raining. But in case of Turkey or during the conflict in Ukraine, the first few months, it was snowing coincidentally. So weather impacts the availability of satellite data a lot, optical at least. But once they are available, they become very useful to start mapping the IDP camps, particular very specific use cases that we can zoom in and look at them. And then we also have to map which roads are still open, which airports are open, so we can land our helicopters and planes. We can dock the ships if it is still standing after an earthquake, and those questions can easily be answered with optical data to be able to visually analyze and understand if things are still open. But in Turkish earthquake case, there was this incredible effort by the government who were able to map almost 2 million buildings geospatially, referencing them and providing the data to us, which has never happened in my experience so far. So once ground data becomes available, then we replace all the satellite-based assessments, but that takes a few weeks or even few months in some countries. So until then, we rely largely on satellite-based estimations or some unconventional sources to better understand what the situation is. Now let me quickly summarize for you. So when we have a disaster management cycle that goes from preparedness to response and resilience all the way back to preparedness, the first step is to understanding the risks. As subnationally as we go and as disaggregated as they are going to be the most useful. So we understand where the risks are higher. And then the second thing is to warn people as early as we can is going to be most useful. Right now, we are able to do it only for earthquakes and, floods and cyclones. And that is already really useful for people to understand what is happening in the region. So inevitably something happens, then we kick into our response mode, where as much as possible we automatically process the satellite data because we don't have time to do them manually one by one. But for large scale disasters that last longer than just a few days, like a smaller flood, then we do a lot more effort in doing continued response and support them geospatially as much as possible. And that kind of repeats all the time. And we have an internal saying, it's a cyclone season somewhere every day. There is a disaster happening at some corner of the world every day. So more information that we bring in and more innovation we bring in to make that information available, it's going to save a lot of lives and literally save a lot of lives. So every time I talk to students, there are a couple of things that I always leave them with in saying innovation and communications are the keys. So this is a satellite map of flood in Pakistan, which I think most of us would agree mapping flood is one of the specific use cases of satellite, right? But this is a screenshot of a field filled with cows, literally cows in South Sudan. When I was in South Sudan for a few months to assist with the response, we couldn't find people. And because of the conflict, people started moving everywhere, and we didn't know where to put our food distribution point. So people there will never leave their cows behind, even if they are hiding in the mountains or somewhere else. So we started searching high resolution satellite data for cows. Literally, I was sitting there in a tent using the best technology humankind has ever had to look for cows because that is the only way to find people. The diverse use cases of this tool that you have in your hand is incredible. How innovative you can become is only up to you, depending on that. So that's the first thing I would encourage you is to get that diversity in thinking. So if you have known a couple of use cases that you know how to do, always think if there are other problems which the same tool can be used to find a solution. Because what you are learning right now is an incredibly versatile tool that's going to let you go into agriculture, environment, climate, disaster, like literally any field on this planet depends on geospatial data. So you need to get that diversity in your thinking as you're working through your degrees now. And the second thing is we need a lot of adaptation to different cultures. What do I mean by that is not only our soft skills on how we understand different cultures, which is critical, very important, but also how we do use this information in different cultures, because not everybody trusts technology, unfortunately. So you would have to adapt and try to see how best to gain that trust in people to have them adopt it. Efficiency is another one. If a machine can do it, let the machine do it. Especially with the advent of AI solutions right now, a lot of manual processes should be ignored to improve our efficiency. And if there is one field you want to invest in the next few years, it's to understand Geo AI solutions. How can AI help us become more efficient is going to be critical in the next few years to scale up these solutions. And the next thing is to go from innovation to adoption, because a lot of times AI became this buzzword, right? Like everybody talks about AI, nobody really knows what it means in practice. So when you think about innovation, if you're choosing a case study, if you're choosing a topic for a thesis, or a job eventually is asking you a solution, don't go for only innovation, because not all innovation can be adopted and utilized. Some will look very pretty and good on paper, but in real time, it won't work. And AI is another good example of that, right? Like when I don't even have electricity, when I'm deployed in the middle of Afghanistan, and somebody comes in with this machine learning model that needs incredible computing resource to run, I won't be able to do that there. So you have to start thinking how to adapt to those different needs. One good example is when I was in Congo, I went with my pretty dashboards and incredible solutions that we were able to build, only to arrive there and find out they don't even have color ink in their printers. And it never occurred to me that I should adapt all the maps that we produce to to be meaningful in black and white. I never thought about it. So when you printed my pretty maps in black and white, it meant nothing. It's just a bunch of gray shades that didn't even coordinate on what is high, what is medium, what is low. And I have this gibberish map, which was useless. So you kind of have to really innovate to those and adopt to the situation that evolves. But I'm so glad I took a career in geospatial, because when I started geoinformatics, everybody thought I would be jobless and on the streets. Then nobody even knew what it meant. But it's one of the most powerful tools out there. And more so today, there is nothing that we are able to do technology wise that doesn't use some sort of geospatial tech in it. Whether you are taking an Uber ride to the airport or using Google Maps on the way, you already know it's all powered by a lot of geospatial solutions in the background. And that has also trickled down to industries, media, all the ministries, all the different sectors that you could imagine. Hardly there is a sector right now which doesn't use geospatial data. So it's such a very powerful, versatile tool, and I really hope you'll be able to make really good use of these solutions in the future. So just one last thing before I finish is, in case you're not clear what you want to do, what's your next career step, always think about what is the problem you want to solve. Don't think about what job you want, but once you find that problem that frustrates you, that upsets you, and you figure a way how to use geospatial tech to be a solution to that problem or part of a solution to that problem, you will have a job that you would really like. Because I'm one of those annoying people on a Monday morning who is super excited to go to work. And it's so important to have a job that you really like, which you enjoy. Otherwise, it becomes a bit difficult to get old. Let me pause here and see if you have any questions, but please feel free to come and ask any questions. I can also put my LinkedIn here. So if you want to get connected, if you're feeling a bit shy to talk in front of everybody, you can always write to me anytime. Thank you so much.
So
And
anybody,
one more thing, don't call me ma'am, just call me Rohini. We need to get out of that British system.
any questions from audience?
Sorry, did you say something to me?
Go ahead. I'm asking. Any questions from audience?
I can't hear you, but I'm assuming you're saying any questions. Let me say.
Okay.
I don't know if people are being shy and not asking any, or if it was just too clear and they don't want to ask any.
So, does the audience have any questions to ask? Feel free to ask. And
I think no question. You can conclude this.
All right. Well, just in case if you don't want to talk now and you want to write later, feel free to do that as well.
okay.
Sure. As we conclude this informative session, I would like to extend our sincere gratitude to our speaker Rohini for sharing her expertise and practical insights on use of the special technology in disaster management. I hope today's talk provide you all clear understanding of how geospatial technology can address challenges of the disaster management effectively. As we move forward, let's continue to explore all possibilities that geospatial technology offers and work together to make a positive impact. I would like to thank Raju sir, Vidya ma'am also from IRS to join this session. We are looking forward you to seeing all our future events continue this journey of learning and collaboration. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Again,
Thank you,
thank you all.
ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Rohini, for joining with us.